When the elevator doors opened, the girl froze in shock. Before her stood a woman, shot through the head, blood staining the floor. Ironically, she was the first to discover the body, immediately becoming a suspect for the police. Was this revenge, or just the beginning of a series of murders? Miranda was sadly drinking alone on the balcony. A few days earlier, she had accidentally caused her lover's death, leaving her in a terrible mood. At that moment, a man in black suddenly appeared behind her, strangled her, and threw her off the balcony. The incident happened so unexpectedly. No one knew who the man in black was, nor was it clear what Miranda had done to be murdered. It all started 3 months ago. Miranda was a hacker and also a stalker. Her favorite thing was using binoculars to watch the luxury apartment across the street. That's where Cléo, a woman who always brought different men home, lived. Meanwhile, Miranda recorded her observations. Today was a strange man, seemingly in a bad mood. No matter how enthusiastic Cléo was, he maintained a cold, expressionless face. Finally, he threw down the money and left. Miranda's favorite male customer was one who visited every Friday. He was handsome, gentle, wealthy, almost every characteristic of an ideal man. Miranda had to care for her grandmother, who lived in a nursing home. Her grandmother suffered from Huntington's disease, a genetic condition that caused a person's health to progressively worsen over time. Her grandmother often didn't recognize her. She even forgot that her mother had died and her sister had run away from home. This disease was very likely to be inherited by Miranda, but she still believed she would always remember everything, especially the fact that before leaving, her sister had blamed her for their mother's death. Miranda coincidentally met Cléo. She didn't know she was being followed. She also recognized Miranda as her neighbor across the street and enthusiastically struck up a conversation. One day, Cléo approached Miranda and said that a wealthy client had recently invited her to his luxury apartment for a date. She didn't have time to look after her dog, so she asked Miranda to look after it. She even gave Miranda the keys to her apartment. This was a fantastic opportunity. Before, Miranda had only secretly observed, but now she could personally experience Cléo's life. She opened her wardrobe. The variety of props overwhelmed her. She unconsciously applied heavy makeup like Cléo. She put on a wig and looked at herself in the mirror. While she was engrossed in admiring her new look, the man who usually came on Fridays knocked on the door. His name was Fernando. After hesitating for a moment, she decided to open the door and explain that she was Cléo's neighbor, but he didn't believe her. He even gently touched her cheek. Since she already had feelings for him, she didn't refuse. And so, a fleeting romance ensued. After saying goodbye, Miranda recorded her feelings at that moment. Suddenly, there was a knock on the door. She opened it and saw another acquaintance of Cléo's. Miranda quickly explained that she was just Cléo's neighbor, but the man showed no intention of leaving. He even approached and groped her. Luckily, Fernando had forgotten something and returned. Seeing the scene, he immediately went to help Miranda, but she proactively pushed the man to the ground. When they both checked on him, he had already breathed his last. That scene reminded Miranda of her mother's death. She completely broke down, crying and screaming. Fernando came to comfort her. Earlier, when he went downstairs, he hadn't seen the receptionist. Besides the two of them, no one knew what had happened. Now they just needed to erase the evidence so no one would know. They hacked into the building's system to delete all surveillance videos related to the man. Then together, they carried the body downstairs. Fernando offered to drive the body away to dispose of it. Miranda returned to the waiting room. They had only met once, yet he was so willing to help her. Suspicious, Miranda researched Fernando's background. She discovered he was divorced. His social media posts were all photos with family and friends, nothing suspicious. Fernando frankly admitted this wasn't his first time being an accomplice. 13 years earlier, Fernando's brother-in-law, Heitor, had murdered their mutual best friend, Bernardo. At the time, Fernando thought it was an accident and helped Heitor cover it up. Later, he realized Heitor had intentionally murdered him. Fernando carried this guilt for years, always hoping to uncover the truth. Heitor ran a large company and owned many hotels. He wielded considerable power, but Fernando suspected him of involvement in a large-scale human trafficking ring. When Fernando discovered Miranda's exceptional computer skills, he immediately thought of asking her to help investigate Heitor's criminal activities. Heitor's company's security system malfunctioned. Fernando immediately introduced Miranda to help Heitor resolve the issue. Upon meeting, Miranda was astonished to discover that this was the same man Cléo had entertained a few days earlier. The story rewinds to the present. 3 months after Miranda's fall from a high floor, she survived. The police arrived to take statements and presented a suspect's photo. Miranda's nurse called a mysterious individual. The nurse received orders to immediately eliminate Miranda. While the police were away, the nurse pushed her into a car and sped off. Miranda watched in horror as the man injected her with a sedative. She closed her eyes in despair. The police discovered Miranda was missing and launched an investigation at the hospital. The doctor, visibly worried, revealed that Miranda's condition was critical. Furthermore, she was pregnant. 3 months prior to to the Hyder security system being attacked by the virus, Miranda had handled the situation with remarkable ease. But he knew that giving her full authority meant sharing control of the system, so he carefully investigated whether she was a prostitute. Fernando calmly replied that the woman he was looking for had already been delivered. It turned out that the wealthy client Cléo mentioned was Hytor. A few days earlier, Hytor had discovered that his daughter wasn't his biological child. Although he hadn't told his wife, their relationship had become strained. Besides the issue of his children, he also carried the trauma from 13 years ago. When Hytor argued with Bernardo accidentally punched him, causing him to fall into the swimming pool. But because there was no evidence, Hytor remained free from legal consequences. Bernardo's sister, Helena, had a secret affair with Hytor. After her brother's death, she didn't resent Hytor at all, and even became his personal assistant in the company. A few days ago, Hytor was in a bad mood, so Fernando introduced Cléo to him. While the two were dating in the apartment, Hytor's wife, Diana, unexpectedly arrived. She was also Fernando's sister. At that moment, Diana had just been severely humiliated by Cléo. Suddenly, a beautiful female hacker appeared at the company, making Diana feel uneasy. She immediately went to her mother to complain, but her mother was understanding, saying that wealthy people all have their own personal affairs. For example, she had comfortably accepted her husband's illegitimate son, Fernando. After saying this, her mother reminded her that what she had done was far worse than Hyder's. Miranda's mind was in turmoil. She worried about her murder of the man being discovered, and she wondered why Cléo hadn't returned yet. Just then, her best friend came to complain about her boyfriend canceling their date. Miranda was in a bad mood, but while she was working for Hytor, her friend had told her that she absolutely had to win his heart. Hyder's security system was terrible, so Miranda proposed improvements and asked him to grant full access. He also stipulated that all of this must be kept secret from Fernando. But due to her close relationship with Fernando, Miranda immediately told him. In the underground parking lot, they couldn't control their emotions and became intimate. A long, peaceful life finally had a little turmoil. Although Miranda knew she should stay away from Fernando's family, she couldn't stop. Just then, she received a strange video from Cléo pleading for help. Cléo said she was locked in room 1202 of a hotel. Miranda immediately traced the location and discovered it was a hotel owned by Hytor. She went there alone. Taking advantage of the housekeeping staff's inattention, she stole the master keycard and easily entered the room. But Cléo was no longer there, only her phone remained. Miranda took it home to unlock it. She played a second video. Cléo, with a terrified face, said that a woman wanted to kill her. She begged Miranda to go somewhere to meet some friends and help her. Miranda went to Cléo's apartment, followed the instructions to retrieve the black box from the wardrobe, put on her inner clothing, and took the invitation. Following the address, she went to the designated place. At the same time, Hytor also received a similar invitation. It stated that if he went, he would find out who the biological father of his daughter was. His personal bodyguard, Raphael, advised him to be careful, but he insisted on going. Because Raphael was worried, he decided to go with Hyder. As night fell, Miranda arrived at the meeting point. She pulled back the strange curtain in front of the door. Before her eyes was a party 100 times more exciting than anything she had ever seen before. At this moment, Diana went to talk to Fernando. Although Fernando was her stepson, the two had been very close since childhood. Diana confessed that her daughter's life had nothing to do with Fernando. At this point, she received a phone call that made her expression change. Hyder brought a gun and told Raphael to wait outside the door before he went into the party. A woman dragged him out onto the balcony and handed him a piece of paper. Having achieved his goal, he immediately left. Miranda, hiding nearby, witnessed all of this. She silently followed him to another room, but before she could find him, she was drugged. When she woke up the next morning, she was tied up in the hallway. The obvious wounds on her body reminded her that being hung up and tortured by a group of people in bizarre costumes the night before wasn't a dream. She saw a person floating in a tank in the swimming pool. It could be Cléo. She immediately untied the ropes, jumped in, and pulled the person out. When she saw the face clearly, she was horrified. The deceased was Diana. Could this be Hytor's house? Fearing implication, Miranda stole a gardener's uniform to avoid detection. She avoided the patrolling guards, trembling as she made her way. Finally, she reached the basement and cut the power to escape the building. Her memories were fragmented and disjointed. She tried to recall what had happened last night. She vaguely saw Hytor and Diana, but what exactly had happened, why she was tied up there, she couldn't remember. Miranda recounted everything that happened at the party to Fernando. Fernando immediately asserted that Hytor was behind the party. He used this method to seduce targets and then transport women abroad for trafficking. But Miranda was still alive. How could this be explained? Hyder returned home looking exhausted. The housekeeper, Gloria, said she hadn't seen Diana all day, but Hyder didn't care. His mind was preoccupied with the piece of paper at the party. It stated that his daughter's biological father was Bernardo. Bernardo, the man he had pushed into the swimming pool 13 years earlier. Hyder tried to forget the painful memories and tried to talk to his daughter Luisa, but she was texting her boyfriend and didn't pay him any attention. A little later, Luisa received a call. Then she rushed outside. Immediately afterwards, there was a scream. Luisa saw Diana's body. Heitor immediately jumped into the pool and embraced Diana. His grief was evident, though it was unclear whether it was genuine or feigned. The police received a report and cordoned off the scene. Diana's mother, Victoria, also arrived. She said Heitor was the killer because Diana had complained a few days earlier about Heitor's infidelity. The police suspected it was a murder stemming from a romantic conflict. They discovered that besides Heitor's apartment, Victoria, Helena, and Fernando were also in the building. Anyone could be the culprit. But because Heitor valued his privacy so highly, the building only had cameras at the entrance and in the parking garage. The police didn't know where to begin their investigation. Helena immediately went to the scene, bringing along an acquaintance named Zoe. At the same time, Fernando and Miranda were still intimately involved when they received the news of Diana's death. Fernando, unable to control his emotions, went to Heitor's house and wept uncontrollably. Zoe tried to comfort him, saying that if Heitor found out about his affair with Diana, it would be the end of him. Fernando finally calmed down. Miranda investigated the address of the party and discovered it was Villa B. The owners of the house were Zoe's parents. Zoe was Fernando's ex-wife. But that was just the beginning. Diana died from drowning around 4 a.m. The police proceeded to question each suspect according to the arranged timeline. At 11 o'clock the previous night, Diana came to talk to Fernando and then hastily left after the call. At Villa B, Heitor also saw Diana. The two had a heated argument and then separated. The security guard at Heitor's building testified that Fernando left the building at 3:30 a.m. He said he was going to buy cigarettes. Then Victoria went out for some fresh air. When she returned, she saw Zoe coming to see Helena. Zoe was once a wealthy young lady with close relationships with Heitor, Helena, and others, so their contact was normal. That night, Diana suddenly died mysteriously at the building. Is there a connection between them? Helena is Bernardo's sister. 13 years ago, Diana was Bernardo's girlfriend, but now she's Heitor's wife. Bernardo drowned in the pool at Heitor's hands. 13 years later, Diana also drowned. Could all of this be Heitor's doing? The police immediately arrested Heitor and searched the entire Villa B. Besides a pile of masks, they found nothing. There was no trace of the party. Even the furniture had been completely removed. The place looked like a haunted house. After Heitor left Villa B, he went to the house of his bodyguard, Rafael. Another friend also testified. Because of his alibi, he was quickly released. At this time, Gloria went to Victoria and told her that she didn't need to pretend anymore. Perhaps everyone in this building was hiding dirty secrets. From that night on, Miranda's mood worsened. She visited her grandmother at the nursing home again. During their conversation, her grandmother mentioned that her sister had also been there. Her memories instantly flashed back to her childhood. Her older sister had tied her up with ropes and blindfolded her, then laughed evilly before leaving the house. All of this was clearly connected to her mother's death. Miranda returned to Villa B, trying to recall what happened that night, but her memories were fragmented and disjointed. On her bike ride home, she carelessly collided with a female police officer who was investigating. She had to feign calmness, not revealing any weakness, thus avoiding the police's suspicion. The next day, Heitor asked Miranda to investigate Diana's daily activities and who she associated with. Although they had lived together for many years, it wasn't until the wedding party that Heitor realized how unfamiliar Diana had become. Compared to the police, Heitor trusted Miranda more, which is why he entrusted this task to her. Meanwhile, Rafael was waiting for Heitor downstairs. When he saw a woman whose purse had been stolen on the roadside, he didn't hesitate to help. Unexpectedly, he developed feelings for that girl. That girl turned out to be Rita, Miranda's best friend. She had just been dumped by her boyfriend and now had a new love. But because Miranda was busy with the mission Heitor had assigned her, she didn't have time to talk to Rita. Therefore, Rita sadly left. Miranda investigated and discovered that Diana had been in a relationship with another woman. They frequently exchanged very intimate messages. Miranda didn't immediately inform Heitor. Instead, she discussed it with Fernando first. They believed Diana might have a lover. Miranda found the woman's email address. Then, she and Fernando went to a convent. The person they found was a nun. The woman's true identity wasn't a relative of Diana's, but her biological mother. It turned out that besides Fernando being an illegitimate child, Diana was also adopted by Victoria. They had no blood relationship. This discovery brought Fernando relief about the wrongdoings he had committed in the past. At the same time, the police discovered that Diana regularly sent money to an account belonging to Zoe. Zoe, who had lived abroad for many years, suddenly took a 9 a.m. flight back to her hometown. She also repeatedly called Diana. Then Diana died. Since Villa B was owned by Zoe's parents, suspicions arose that Zoe was involved. Zoe was Fernando's ex-wife and had once been considered Victoria's daughter-in-law. However, their relationship seemed far from good. At this point, Zoe sat down and seriously told Victoria that Diana was a venomous snake and that sooner or later someone would kill her. That night, Fernando sought out Victoria to ask why she hadn't told him the truth about his relationship with Diana. If he had known sooner, he wouldn't have lived with the guilt of having loved Diana for so many years. Zoe overheard their entire conversation. She was also hiding a secret. She was the one who had strangled Diana. 13 years ago, she had recorded a video that served as evidence of Bernardo's death. Now that Diana was murdered, the video was worthless. To avoid police suspicion, Zoe unhesitatingly deleted it. Miranda followed the lead from Diana's money transfers to Zoe to investigate further and recover the deleted video. A few days later, Diana's funeral was held as planned. Miranda hid behind a tree, observing the expressions of the people. Victoria didn't dare step forward. She only stood from afar, weeping as she looked at her daughter's body. At that moment, the police arrived and arrested Zoe in front of everyone. During questioning, she showed no signs of panic. She claimed that Diana's money transfer was merely a gesture of assistance and that her visit that night was to see her parents. However, the police discovered that she hadn't contacted her parents for 3 years. Clearly, she was lying. Miranda recovered the video Zoe had deleted. It was proof that Heitor had pushed Bernardo into the swimming pool. But in reality, Bernardo was only slightly injured at the time, not dead. After Heitor left, Diana herself approached and held Bernardo's head underwater until he stopped breathing. It turned out that Diana was the killer 13 years ago. That was also why Zoe threatened her and forced her to transfer the money. The transfer happened 3 months later. Miranda woke up in a locked room in a hospital. There was only one doctor beside her, but he was actually the nurse at the nursing home where Miranda's grandmother lived. She grabbed a nearby plate and knocked the doctor unconscious. Then she stole the keys from him and ran to another room. She discovered a series of torture instruments. Cléo was tied up and dying on a table. Suddenly, someone from behind rushed forward and knocked Miranda out. When she woke up, Cléo was lying in a pool of blood. She was tied to a bed and cared for again. Sedatives were injected, causing her to gradually lose consciousness. Time rewinds to 3 months earlier. Miranda handed the video to Heitor. He was stunned, speechless. A memory suddenly flashed through his mind. 13 years ago, he had a secret affair with Helena. Unfortunately, Bernardo found out. He opposed the relationship and got into a fight with Heitor. During the struggle, Heitor accidentally caused Bernardo to fall into the swimming pool. For 13 years, he had been consumed by guilt for killing his best friend. Unexpectedly, the person who truly unsettled him was his wife, the one he shared a bed with every night. But Luisa's biological father was Bernardo. So why did Diana kill Bernardo? And who killed Diana? Miranda showed the video to Fernando, but he clearly didn't believe it and doubted its authenticity. Of course, Heitor didn't believe Fernando either, because Fernando's sister and ex-wife had both covered up a murder. It would be illogical to say Fernando knew nothing about it. Finally, Heitor gave the video to Helena. When he learned the truth, he was also shocked. 13 years ago, due to Bernardo's death, he quickly severed ties with Helena. He chose to marry Diana instead. Now that the truth has come to light, can he rekindle their romance? While they were intimately involved, Victoria discovered their affair. Heitor left in embarrassment. Victoria coldly told Helena, "I know you're my husband's mistress." Initially, Miranda claimed she was commissioned by Fernando to investigate. However, when Heitor met her, she seemed to trust him. Perhaps Heitor was truly innocent. Fernando reminded her that Heitor was a cunning and manipulative man. After all, Cléo had disappeared after meeting him. Maybe Miranda was just a pawn in Heitor's plan. She began to hesitate, unsure who to believe. She went to Heitor's company to copy a large amount of data. Among the documents, she found a USB drive. Besides photos of him with his daughter, there were some strange props. There were even photos of Cléo. This further unsettled Miranda. Could everything Fernando said be true? Rita came to visit Miranda. Recently, her love life has been going smoothly. Rafael is gentle and considerate. He even signed up for dance classes to please her. She feels completely immersed in love. But Miranda warns her to stay away from Rafael because the deaths of Heitor and Diana are definitely connected. Someone as close to Heitor as Rafael couldn't possibly be unaware. It's very possible that his approach to her is also part of Heitor's plan. After they say goodbye, Rita runs into her ex-boyfriend, Otto. Although they broke up not long ago, she still has lingering feelings for him. But now she has a handsome and charming boyfriend. Otto, on the other hand, is just an ugly man. She lost interest at first sight and decisively ended things with him. But she doesn't know that ever since she started dating Rafael, Otto has been secretly following her from afar like a shadow, sometimes visible, sometimes hidden. No one knows whether he does this to rekindle their past relationship or for some other purpose. Miranda goes to see Fernando. His comforting words helped her temporarily forget the pressures of the past few months. Early the next morning, while Miranda was still fast asleep, Zoe suddenly burst in and scolded her. Miranda, feeling dejected, got dressed and left. But as she crossed the street, she unexpectedly unexpectedly saw Cléo. She immediately chased after him. Cléo ran away. In the end, Miranda couldn't determine if it was really Cléo. She thought it was a symptom of Huntington's disease acting up and that it might be a hallucination. Her grandmother also mistook Miranda for Zoe. She repeatedly told Zoe not to hate Miranda anymore. She said it was her fault for kicking Zoe out of the house years ago. Meanwhile, Fernando met Helena and asked her what she wanted to clarify with Zoe. Why could she film the video but not intervene to stop Diana from killing someone? After Fernando left, Zoe came out of her room and told Helena that she had one last task to complete. That evening, Heitor invited Miranda to his company and asked her to send the video of Diana killing Bernardo to the police, telling her not to let Fernando know. Miranda completed the task. She was about to leave when the elevator doors opened. The sight before her horrified her. Zoe had been shot in the head and was dead inside the elevator. The police quickly arrived at the scene. Miranda was the first to discover the body, so she was summoned for questioning. She had a relationship with Zoe's ex-husband and was also a security system consultant for Diana's husband. Thus, she was simultaneously involved with the relatives of both victims, which further fueled the police's suspicions. After the questioning ended, late at night, Miranda quietly returned home. She saw the words, "I know what you did," written on the mirror. She suddenly remembered being locked in a closet by her mother as a child and witnessing her mother's accidental murder. Years later, she had also accidentally killed the man who had molested her. Miranda met Fernando again and learned that Zoe had recently called him, saying she was terrified and wanted to leave as soon as possible. Fernando hadn't paid much attention at the time. To uncover the truth, Miranda returned to Heitor's company and overheard Gloria calling her son, expressing her disappointment in him. Miranda ignored the conversation and continued hacking. She discovered a video involving Cléo and Heitor, and for some reason felt uneasy. She went to her desk to get some fresh air and unexpectedly saw Luisa standing near the edge of the rooftop. After reading the news, Miranda learned that Luisa was in love. They had been in a secret relationship, afraid to let Heitor know. Not long ago, Luisa had met a man online. He had tricked her into sending him many sensitive photos. He even threatened that if she didn't obey him, her family would suffer. Thinking about the many people who had died recently, Luisa believed he was the culprit. When Heitor learned of this, he was furious. He asked Miranda to access Luisa's social media account, find out the man's identity, and have the police arrest him. Unexpectedly, the man turned out to be the father of Luisa's boyfriend, and also a receptionist at Heitor's building. However, he wasn't involved in the murder. He was just a pervert who used women's fear to blackmail them into taking compromising photos. After this incident, Heitor completely dropped his guard with Miranda. He even frankly admitted that after suspecting Luisa was Bernardo's daughter, he had Helena do a DNA test between Luisa and Bernardo. The results showed they were not related by blood. This meant Luisa wasn't Bernardo's daughter. So, who was her real father? Days passed without any news of Cléo. Because she hadn't paid her rent, the landlord had removed all her belongings. Soon after, a new neighbor moved into the apartment across the hall. That night, Miranda received a video file sent by Cléo. In the video, a mysterious man looked directly into the camera and said that she was the next person. He was wearing a bracelet. It was clearly Raphael's bracelet. Since Rita started dating Raphael, she had always had a happy smile on her face. Miranda feared Rita would be dragged into this, so she constantly reminded Rita to keep her distance from Raphael. During their conversation, Rita revealed that the bracelet was a memento left to Raphael by his father. It had been lost a few days earlier, but if it was lost, how could it be such a coincidence? So, was the man in the video really Raphael? At the same time, Gloria couldn't contact her son Rossi, so she was extremely worried. Gloria questioned Victoria about whether she was hiding Rossi because she had a questionable relationship with Rossi in the past, but Victoria completely denied it, leaving Gloria at a loss. Heitor intended to investigate Diana's past to find Luisa's biological father. Heitor asked Raphael if he had any clues. Raphael suddenly remembered some things between him and Diana 13 years ago. He decided to keep it a secret from Heitor. The new man at Cléo's house invited a girl over. Miranda intended to revert to her old habit of peeking, but as soon as she raised her camera, they pulled the curtains shut. Miranda had to return to her work. This time, what she discovered was even more shocking. The conversation between Diana and Raphael was extremely intimate. She recounted this to Heitor. Raphael had been Heitor's bodyguard for over a decade. He had always been absolutely loyal. Could it be that just because of a romantic relationship, things had turned out this way? Heitor questioned Raphael, but he remained calm, admitting that 13 years ago, he had been infatuated with Diana, but that was just the past. Since Heitor and Diana were together, he had never had any other intentions. At this moment, Miranda seemed to remember some things that happened at Villa B. Suddenly, the doorbell rang, startling her. It turned out to be their new neighbor, Paulo. He found Miranda beautiful and wanted to get to know her. After Paulo left, Miranda went to the nursing home to visit her grandmother. Her grandmother was in in very good spirits that day. She happily mentioned that Gabriella hadn't visited her anymore. Miranda thought her grandmother was mistaken, but when she turned around she saw a bouquet of bright red roses on the table. Could Gabriella really have returned? The strange events didn't end there. That day, Miranda also discovered that Cléo had returned. She recounted how she was almost auctioned off at Villa B. The highest bidder was Hightor, but Villa B imposed some conditions before she was released. She didn't say what those conditions were. Cléo asked about Miranda and Fernando's relationship. Upon hearing that they were romantically involved, Cléo's expression changed. She warned Miranda to be extremely careful with Fernando. Victoria convened an emergency meeting of all the residents in the building. Everyone wondered why she couldn't speak on the phone. Unexpectedly, the meeting was for Victoria to announce that she had found her illegitimate daughter and wanted to bring her to live with her. That daughter was Cléo. 2 months later, Miranda had been locked up for over 10 days. The doctor removed the handcuffs and led her out of the sealed room. This entire scene was observed by a couple upstairs. The man with the gun immediately chased after them. As Miranda ran up the bridge, she was stopped. The person who got out of the car was Paulo. He pointed his gun at her and put her in the trunk. Then he drove into the doctor before leaving. Miranda was once again taken back to the sealed room. Besides Paulo, there was another person supervising from upstairs, Victoria. Fearing things would go too far, they decided to bury Miranda alive. The situation became increasingly complicated. Could Miranda escape safely? 2 months before Victoria announced she had found her illegitimate daughter, the events unfolded so abruptly that Miranda was stunned. She began to suspect that Cléo had been using her and Fernando. Unexpectedly, Cléo took the initiative to come to her. She didn't explain much, only warning Miranda to be careful at the party at Villa B because Hightor was behind it all. Seeing Cléo's terrified, tearful eyes, Miranda's heart wavered. She didn't know whether to believe her or not. But if Cléo had never been kidnapped and had never been to Villa B, then everything was a lie. Fernando wanted to dispel Miranda's doubts. He said the video showed Cléo tied up. Her whole body was covered in wounds, and they didn't look fake. Miranda immediately became suspicious because she had never told Fernando about the video. So how did he know? Just then, her grandmother in the nursing home urgently called her to come over. But when she arrived, she only received the news that her grandmother had died of cardiac arrest. Since Gabriella left, her grandmother was Miranda's only remaining relative. This shock completely devastated her. She locked herself in her house, ignoring anyone who knocked on the door. During that time, Hightor kept sending her messages. After receiving no response for a month, he decided to go to her house. She began to calm down and followed him to the seaside villa. During their time together, she opened up more, and their relationship progressed further. Hightor confessed that he knew Fernando had kept Miranda around to spy on him, but he didn't blame her. He just wanted to uncover Fernando's true nature. When Miranda returned home, Fernando was waiting for her. He questioned her about her relationship with Hightor. Miranda was too exhausted after everything that had happened to trust anyone anymore. She decided to tell the whole truth to the inspector. Just then, a group of police officers rushed in. They said they had just discovered a secret human trafficking operation located in a warehouse west of the city. The owner of the warehouse was also the person the police were monitoring. Miranda, full of determination, decided to disguise herself and investigate to ensure her safety. The inspector arranged for people to lie in ambush around the area. This party was even more disturbing than the one at Villa B. There, Miranda saw Hightor's figure. Before she could approach him, she was drugged. While delirious, she felt like she was being auctioned off. Several faces in the auction room were very familiar. One of them was Victoria. Suddenly, Hightor burst in with a gun. Victoria was forced to cover her face and hide. After Victoria fled in the chaos, the police arrived in time, arrested everyone present, and rescued Hightor and Miranda. After the incident, Miranda and Hightor lost their vigilance towards each other, but Miranda was still drawn into the murder cases and criminal networks. Every day she lived in fear. Therefore, she decided to leave Hightor. She wanted to live peacefully. It turned out that the real person behind the human trafficking ring was Victoria. After her husband's death, she still wanted to maintain her aristocratic status, so she spared no effort to get rich. When everything was exposed, she planned to flee to Europe. Before leaving, she sarcastically told Fernando that everything that belonged to Hightor, from his sister, his lover, to his relatives, had ultimately been stolen by him. Fernando couldn't refute her, because it was the truth. He arranged to meet Hightor and told him that it didn't matter if he had nothing. He would win everything back, including Luisa. The underlying reason stemmed from a story that began 13 years ago. That day, Diana hosted a party at her house. All her friends were invited. At that time, Fernando and Zoe were deeply in love, and Rafael also developed feelings for Diana. Diana was dating Bernardo at the time, but Bernardo couldn't feel any interest in her because he secretly harbored feelings for Fernando. For the sake of her family, Victoria wanted Diana to marry Bernardo. This hurt Diana's pride, and she resolutely refused. A fierce argument erupted within in the family. In her anger, Victoria revealed the truth that Diana wasn't her biological daughter. Diana couldn't accept it and locked herself in her room. Fernando came to talk to her and comfort her. Unexpectedly, they had a relationship. Bernardo happened to push open the door and witnessed it firsthand. Bernardo returned home, only to find Heitor and Helena being affectionate. He was already unhappy with Heitor's house, so the two got into a fight. Heitor accidentally pushed Bernardo into the swimming pool. Fernando and Diana witnessed this. To cover up the recent scandal, Fernando and Diana dealt with Bernardo. Zoe filmed the whole thing. Diana later discovered she was pregnant. She hid the truth and married Heitor. Therefore, Luisa's biological father is Fernando. Fernando pulled out a gun and pointed it at Heitor. The two struggled, and then a gunshot rang out. Miranda received news that Heitor was in trouble. Immediately afterward, someone broke into her house and threw her off the balcony. All the intervening scenes depict what Miranda experienced afterward. The being buried alive was actually just a scare tactic by Victoria. Miranda had just crawled out of the hole when she saw Victoria smirking. Enraged, she grabbed a shovel and struck Victoria hard. She hadn't run far when a car drove past. Miranda cries for help. She gets into the car and only then discovers Rita's picture hanging inside. Immediately afterwards, she is knocked unconscious by the driver. This time, her kidnapper is Otto, Gloria's son. There's a knock on the door, so Otto tells Gloria to hide in another room. He then opens the door. Paulo delivers the promised payment, but when Otto is distracted, Paulo pulls out a gun and shoots him dead. Afterward, Miranda confronts the mastermind, Gabriella. Gabriella has impersonated Cléo to get close to Miranda. Everything she does is for revenge. Her stepfather not only abused her mother, but also sexually assaulted her. Miranda just stood by and watched, doing nothing. Even on the day her mother was murdered, Miranda didn't resist. Later, her grandmother always favored Miranda and shunned Gabriella. Every day, a fire of hatred burned in Gabriella's heart. Finally, she tied Miranda up and set fire to the house. Unexpectedly, Miranda was saved. Gabriella, however, was driven out of the house by her grandmother. Then her grandmother publicly stated that Gabriella had run away from home. What fueled Gabriella's hatred even more was that when Miranda grew up, she and her stepfather lived with another woman and her daughter. That other woman was Rita. But that time, Miranda didn't run away. She bravely told the truth. She and the other two women worked together to deal with her stepfather. From then on, Miranda and Rita became very close. Every time Gabriella recalled the past, she was filled with resentment. If Miranda had been so brave as a child, perhaps Gabriella wouldn't have been harmed. Their mother wouldn't have died. So Gabriella collaborated with Fernando. She wanted to kill Miranda, while Fernando wanted to seize their family and property. The two worked together to execute a perfect revenge plan. Gabriella knew Miranda's weakness, curiosity, so she moved into the apartment across the street so Miranda could freely spy on her. Everything was under Gabriella's control. The son of the man Miranda stabbed to death was just an actor. That day at Villa B, Fernando sent an invitation to Heitor and then had someone inform Diana about his true identity, which led to a fierce argument between the two. Diana lost control, returning home to tell Fernando that Luisa was his daughter. Fernando reproached her for keeping it a secret for so long. She angrily retorted that she had never loved him. These words pierced his heart, turning love into hatred. He pushed Diana underwater, causing her to drown. Gabriella lured Miranda to Villa B to eliminate her. But upon learning that Fernando had killed Diana, she devised a new plan. They placed Miranda by the pool to create a fake crime scene. Unexpectedly, Miranda escaped. Gabriella had Paulo live across from Miranda's house to monitor her constantly. Gabriella wasn't Victoria's illegitimate daughter. Their relationship was purely one of mutual benefit, calling each other mother and daughter for convenience. Zoe, after losing Diana, who had once been her breadwinner, turned to Fernando. Fearing she would ruin his plan, Fernando decisively shot her dead. Gabriella was the one who threw Miranda off the balcony. That night, while Rita and Rafael were at a party, Gabriella had Rita assassinated. She wanted to witness Miranda's despair firsthand. Miranda's despair only made Gabriella happier. Now that Gabriella had confessed everything, she intended to kill Miranda. But Miranda managed to untie herself and lunged at her, fighting. Just then, the police arrived. Before they could subdue Gabriella, a gunshot rang out. She collapsed. The story seemed like a complete tragedy, but the police told Miranda that in the confrontation between Heitor and Fernando, Fernando was the one who died. Heitor was still alive. The story was incredibly chaotic, with almost no one having a happy ending. Fortunately, the two lovers survived. Miranda was carrying Heitor's child. Thank you for watching. Goodbye, and see you again.